know, but half a movie sends someone to Bethlehem to lead. So it's
quite a big enterprise.
Yeah. Considering like they've got such a small staff team.
Yeah,
the setup might be a bit funny because I got stuff on the table and then I'll sort of be here. But
one sec, we'll go around.
Well, not cool. I just said I would.
Thank you. So, positive.
Thank you. And thanks for... That's okay. And I need just a bit of patience because I'm in a bit of pain today with my shoulder. So hello. Good to see you all. I'm Francesca. Good to meet you. But you can see me on my website, practiceandfrank.com. About my practice, not to plug it. So yeah, welcome to my presentation. In this presentation, I'm going to lay out my research, influences, process, materials I've put together, and what's next in this project that I've developed with Kara Center at Tower Hamlets using Buto. So my research question is that what is the specific offers of Buto for and with carers, with a secondary question of what is their effect on my practice. And just thinking a bit about who carers are. Carers are an overworked or worked to exhaustion through caring group of people, and this creates social isolation. Your personal health is massively decreased if you're a carer, so you probably yourself have a physical ailment. So the life expectancy for a carer is 62. As a carer, you get sort of stuck into repeated behaviours, so you have a dampening of creativity, and then sort of through being stuck as well, you're sort of limited through your access to self-empowerment. And specifically speaking about Tower Hamlets carers, they often have the increased financial struggle, but it's sort of countered with an extremely strong sense of place identity. And so those two are together, and they're sort of quite beautiful and contentious. So I'll talk a bit about it later, but here I've got a volume of Tower Hamlets writers, and I just want to make my project include that this isn't just for carers, but these carers and thinking about the place where we are. So to think about, that's fine. To think about how am I going to answer these questions, I sort of have like a little bit of a to-do list. So my role to answering, what is the effect on Buto with carers means that I need to gather information about carers in my area. I need to correspond with them. I need to ask open questions. I need to formulate a plan for practice. So for me, that means like a taster, and then a workshop block, and then time to redevelop, and then another block. There's all the logistical things that happen. So setting who will attend, setting a time, booking the space, facilitating access, putting into practice the research on accessibility, answering emails and phone calls. And there's also the creating space for feedback and developing open questions that allow for this. So that's how I'm going to get to my research question, and I'll go through that. But I'd just like to start about examples. Buto is itself a really niche art form, although international, it takes place within very small communities, and it's not been done with carers before. So when I think about the practices that really inspire me and that are to do with community in Buto, I think of Evangeline, and she has a Dream the project, which is in New York. It's been running weekly for 1.5 hours for more than 10 years in male and female prisons. And in this project, Evangeline provides training, which incorporates physical warm-ups, guided imagery, group exercises, improvisation, dance, and Buto training. The workshops are, you can't access them, so you sort of access them through testimonials. And what I was reading, I found really captivating. And so one of the workshop participants mentioned that he came to class most days feeling negative and hopeless, and that he was able to let go of his negativity and feel positive and hopeful by the end of each class, which I think is interesting because Evangeline defines her Buto work as a dance of darkness. So I thought this practice is really interesting. So I remember these works when I was thinking about what groups to work with for this class, and I think that group has a lot of emotions that they're carrying around with them all the time as carers. Evangeline's method is not lacking in aesthetics or rigor, and this also inspired me, following on from Modge's argument for aesthetics in her applied theatre work, Revolutionary Beauty. So a quote from someone else's testimony about Evangeline is that she brought her skill and knowledge of the Buto art of dance into this facility, and through her ability to relate to students, incarcerated men, she was able to guide these dancers to an astounding level of execution and professional presentation of Buto dance, which clearly positively changed their lives and many involved. And so that's quite powerful. I also read, in previous years, working with women at Bayview Correctional Facility, participants have expressed how the program has tremendously helped them cope with their incarceration, become more open to others, more able to offer support to others, and their general sense for hope and life and well-being increased. They made strides physically and emotionally, and their confidence and self-esteem has greatly increased. And so this really made me deeply reflect on the reflective and transformative qualities of Buto practice. And I wanted to explore the practice with carers who are in their own way incarcerated bodies, facing similar challenges to the women who are described here. And devising my workshop template, I included some of the practices that she listed, that she works with them, because clearly it's a template that works. In order to create the conditions for this practice of Buto with the group, and for my practice to be effective with that group, I've undertaken a sequence of research, so I'd like to share that. And I've got it in a big list. So Buto practice, I had to reflect on what Buto means to me. Is the founder of Buto, Tatsumi Hijikata, once said, there are as many types of Buto as Buto choreographers. So for me that was identifying my training and interest in Buto practice, and you can see that in the booklet that I put together. I've just really clearly listed down, like, this is my training, this is my interest, and having that to be accountable to has been really useful in developing the work and answering questions, quite nebulous questions to do with the art form. So in terms of my training, it's about connecting our transformational body with the environment. What does it mean to become something other? Common inquiries into what is dance, aligned with attempts to erase the self and shed the daily body, and to return to a body that has not been robbed, which is something I think about a lot. Common images and themes explored in my practice are cycles of life, birth, death, nature imagery, physical transformation, playing with time and slow motion, sensitizing the material body, and working from the inside to the outside. And my teacher has always taught me that she's not interested in a style, but in facilitating the process of discovering creativity for everyone. So I'm quite interested in, yeah, it's great pictures. So I'm interested in doing that for other people. So next on that's good. So that's where I am. I know what my Buto practice is about. I think the next thing, and it should be right at that foundation, is to learn about accessibility and what it means to create accessible space. So I interviewed Hugo Ferguson, who's the director of Bubble Club, which is a learning disabled club night, which I've attended, and he's a really wonderful man. And just a little list that he'd sent me is there about accessible space. And I thought that it was important to learn really specifically, like, what is accessible space and what is the thinking about accessibility, because this is where carers often are caring for people who have a learning disability, so I'm seeing where they're coming from more, and also what this group perhaps themselves will need. So yeah, that was really useful, and I'll go on to a bit later about how I plan the space. The third thing I did was read Applied Theatre, an introduction by Tim Prenti and Sheila Preston. And they sort of, in that, summed together a lot of different research, which I found really useful as like one index. And so in that introduction, they summarized Paulo Freire, saying the possibilities of learning as a way of transforming the lives of students in a process that depends on the establishment of a genuine dialogue between student and teacher, in which both parties undertake the roles of both learner and teacher. And that's sort of furthered by this quote in Theatre for Development that says, remember, a workshop is an active dialogue between yourself and the participants and each other, the participants and themselves. So thinking about like all the different levels of communication and learning that happens. And really thinking to myself, I need to have a workshop that has a structure that allows for the non-hierarchical exchange of practice. Also in Applied Theatre Introduction, they quote Taylor, which Philip Taylor, who says, the theatre becomes a medium for action, for reflection, but most important for transformation. A theatre in which new modes of being can be encountered and new possibilities for mankind can be imagined. Buto, literally the dance of transformation and the body of becoming, it became really clear this is a really, it's going to be a really integral practice for applied theatre work. And some ethical questions come up from that as well, like who is being transformed and from what, who is doing the transforming and who judges this. And I think always referring back to that, the people are teaching themselves and I'm facilitating them in their own style and having sort of open sessions. Will sort of answer to some of those, but something to keep myself accountable to. The next thing that I read, which I mentioned before, is Modge's article, Revolutionary Beauty, Out of Homophobic Hate and Applied Theatre Aesthetics. And it's just this key little thing that she said there, which was, applied theatre people, let us check the privilege this phrase constructs and know when we have been privilege checked. So an example of that is like, although I am a former carer, and I really was for years, I don't face some of like the really deeply troubling financial stresses and council problems that some of the people are facing in Tower Hamlets. And to just check that I, although I might be able to say, oh, as a carer I've really suffered, that people have that extra layer. And the group of women who I'll talk a bit more about who they are will be excellent in checking me. East Ends, salt of the earth. Also in Modge's article here, she argues how applied theatre and even the sort of term applied theatre denotes a sort of lack of aesthetics, and she gives this really beautiful argument, thank you Modge, for beauty, and for beauty, and that this is effective. And I was thinking, because I don't want to bring in too many aesthetic principles, because I think people can be like, oh, I'm doing something wrong, or I'm not doing it right, and that's sort of against the sort of structures that I had talked about earlier. So, but I think that this made me think I need to have a specific couple aesthetic points, just a couple really simple ones that can go all the way through the body and in terms of the mind. And for me, those are asymmetry, which is really key in Buto, to be asymmetrical and to explore asymmetry, and to explore the passive body and touch, which has a certain like light quality to movement that that is also a massive part of the Buto aesthetic that I've not very well demonstrated there. And then here, like what I've got on the table as well, like if people want that extra sense of aesthetic, they can seed kit, but not to put that on them. Especially because Buto deals so much with things like death, decay, deep emotional pain, sort of an infinity of emotional pain. I was thinking of that when Modge writes, it's true that beauty takes the edge off the pain in this piece, which is speaking about I Stand Corrected, certainly even for me performing it. And just thinking more about, so she's speaking about her own practice and speaking about beauty, and then there's a big argument in that essay about, you know, for your own artistic practice, coming to the table with art. I am a Buto practitioner, and in this essay she says, if we are not artists, we should not be using art with groups. So I like that, affirm that we're artists. So my next piece of research, and it's reformulated a bit because it's on a Mac but it was with PowerPoint, is I listed all the care centres in Tower Hamlets. So I've got my idea for the workshop, I know what I can offer, I know where I'm coming from, and now I'd like to take it there, and you can see that in the coloured thing where I reached out to every care centre in Tower Hamlets. And for those who responded or engaged with me, I did additional research into what's their remit so I could be more informed for when we were speaking. And I think logistically, like, that is so important. It's really great to have a research question, what's the effect of Buto on caregivers? But I need to know, like, you know, who are these groups and what are the organisations they can offer. The next thing that I did is meet with Project Fakuma to see what other people are doing in a similar way. So although it's not the same project, they are setting up different artistic projects and linking to different centres. So sort of speaking with them made me think more about the sustainability of a project, which I'll touch on a bit later. I think the big step for me in this process is the meeting with Tony. Because he's the carer support advocate at Carer Centre Tower Hamlets, and this was really key in project development. And in theatre development, they say when doing research, the most important thing is to speak to the leader as well as to the community themselves, get them involved, find out as much detail as we can about the people. And so Tony, to me, became really clear that he's a key player, and to speak to him to understand this particular group and to get me in for the sort of service users, because they're very tribal. this group of women. And so speaking with him, going from emailing him to phoning him to meeting him here to show him the spaces, to meeting him at the Carers Forum, which he runs for all carers to voice their concerns and to educate each other, to listening about what I'd learned in the Carers Forum, and meeting the key community members, because there's a couple really outspoken women, and I knew that if they like me, then it's going to be very easy for me in this group, and if they don't like me, then it's going to be game over. So yeah, that research from theatre development, the most important thing is to speak to the leader and also the other leaders. I really internalized that and made an effort to just be really real, and because I had to present without knowing that I was presenting, it was very real. It just came out of where I was speaking from, and that was probably the best asset that I could have had in terms of linking with that community. What you can also see in that paper that Monster's got in her hand is in that first meeting I had with Tony, which was here, I was, instead of being like, this is what I can offer, do you want it, is to ask open questions. So asking, what's your programming like right now, finding out about the Caregivers Academy and what that remit is, because that's part of their organisation. And so that remit is emotion management, self-help, and specific skills around caring and educational. And that Caregivers Academy also has strong links to the London Buddhist Centre, and they have a serious interest in extending this. So then that got us into speaking, well, what can we work on? And what we sort of determined together, and it was really beautiful that it was collaborative, that both of us were sort of saying, this is what we want, and I'm like, well, these are the skills that I have, and sort of putting that together is we came up with a Buto class with accessible language, so not like lofty art language, at the Queen Mary space so people can socialise somewhere new, with space for peer support and mindfulness practices. So remember the foot exercise that I did with you guys is sort of mindfulness, but a little bit of practice. And he also gave me some guidance about how people will need to be brought into some of the more full-body practices, is that they'll need humour and banter. Because otherwise they'll just disassociate and they'll just take the piss. And it was really helpful to have that tip, so he's been a really great ally. So even though I'm facilitating alone, I feel like I've got someone to talk to. And to be transported to the practice would be really desired. So we devised a system for Hill Walk then from their area to here. So that's quite important, and that's part of the accessible space remit. The next thing I want to talk about a bit is the Carers Forum, and I don't know how I'm doing on time as well. So just tell me if I'm being a bit silly.
You're nearly at time.
Alright, cool.
15 minutes? 22?
Alright, cool. That's okay. I've got 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Okay, at the Carers Forum, I made notes on what did I hear. So not just what people were saying, because people were saying about community services, they were saying about my son's done this, or my phone stopped working, but what did I hear? And I heard that people were really outraged at being just a caregiver, and that they are coming with their own set of skills. And I made a real effort to learn, well, what are those skills? And it's like, I used to do the budget for the military, like I used to handle $500 million things, or I'm trained in manual assistance, I'm trained in resilience, I know about time being quick and slow, I know about this and that, and so that was really key, to listen to what people were saying. And what I also heard was that these are extremely strong women, mostly, and that's the group, and it's not about, I remember at the end, these women were talking about their lives, and I was just so overcome with just a deep sense of love for them. And as they just kept talking on, and I'm running late for this class, and I just sort of needed something just to sort of say, like, I need to go. And I said, listen, I need to go, but you're great. And they almost seemed repulsed by that, because they were kind of like, I already know that I'm great. And I really respected that, and that also made me reflect on the way that I'll need to really check myself and not sort of putting my opinions on someone, because they're coming at everyone with their own very high level of skill. And to say, if I were to express that, it's like, I really think I really enjoyed your company. Might be the sort of the way that they'd want to hear that a bit more. Yes, so coming off of all of that, part of the document was putting in my extra meditation background, because I know that they'd appreciate that, and that'd be a link to something. And you can read in that, I'm quite proud of that document, because I think it's quite clear. So, coming to the end, And
Your last words.
my final words.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you can talk to me later if you'd like to get my workshop template. Maybe I'll just say that I hope to see how Buto can facilitate moments of self-care, new movement, stillness, community interaction, and reducing social isolation, and creating a space for that kind of feedback. And when I think about what's next, I like to keep running these blocks, and there's a lot of interest for it. And I'd like it to remain, this is really the last bit much, I'd really like it to remain adaptable for the needs of the carers and the care centre, be those remaining workshops with social space or building into a project that campaigns for carers' rights and provides a platform for the recognition of carers as highly skilled members of the community who should be consulted on legislative policy relating to carers and those who are cared for. Because that's what they really want, that's what the care centre wants. What's next? That would be, if people wanted to build into something like that, I want to be able to think about that. However, I recognise, like, I'm not an advocate, but Tony would be, he is an advocate, so we would team up together. And when I think about them, what's realistically next? I'd like to continue this work. I'd love to apply for some funding so I could be paid even a nominal amount for my work, and thinking about how to share this money and apply for funding in a way that everyone could share in it. In digital development, they talk that true leadership is not one person benefiting and the others, and everybody would need money in this situation. So thinking about what's next, how do you apply for funding that everyone can receive from it, and I really look forward to what's to come, so thanks very much.
Great work. What's your biggest worry?
My biggest worry,
Well, worry is perhaps not the most helpful word, but you know what I mean, doubt, question.
I think my biggest doubt is because some of the women know each other, is going to be that I haven't seen each other for a week and they're just going to want to get right into talking. And my biggest doubt is that if I say let's get into the practice, that's going to socially distance them from me. Yeah, so I think I'm trying to have really defined talking time and practice time, and my biggest doubt is that how that will relate to their sort of social relationship to me is switching between the two of them. So I hope to just have food, and then that's just like, if I make food myself, if I make like dolmadas, which is like Greek, maybe that'll sort of win me a bit of extra favour, and then it's okay to say that, oh, you have to sack, like that's practice. That's my doubt.
There seems to be there's something underneath that around, which is not something we thought about very much together, around being liked and accepted by participants, for yourself, and that, and whether it's always that important for the work. I think being disliked is probably a problem. And it's okay to be the one that, you know, I get it when I come here, right? Like 2 o'clock, I'm like, come on, get in a circle, and I get, can I sit on the floor? Actually, I'm not really into, you know, I get that, and it's, you know, so what I'm doing is not always necessarily liked, or I'm hoping I'm not disliked, but what I'm doing is not necessarily always liked, or, you know, so there's that thing.
I hope it has that split where it might be like, this is just a practice, and that I'm still in with the group. So I'd really like some new intergenerational friends as well.
It's going to be a balance that your need with theirs, but yeah. Other affirmations, reflections? This is Ahmed's
I'm
sitting
impressed by your workload.
Yes, this is incredible.
It's really organised.
Yeah.
You see the spreadsheet.
Yeah. The spreadsheet.
colour coding.
Yeah.
Perhaps we shouldn't say you're great. Perhaps we should say you really appreciate.
You really appreciate it.
Thank you for
Thanks,
this
guys.
kind of fellowship.
Thanks. I just, props to Care Centre for taking me on. They're very punk rock, so it's cool. It's cool to hang out there. I gave them a little William Burroughs as a present. So it's happy with us.
Okay.
Yeah, do you know her? Yeah. That is her. She's lovely.
She's supposed to work. Is it like one of the more talented people? I feel like I got
She's so kind and questioning.
Yeah.
I brought this copy for you if you'd like to keep it, and you can have any of these documents that you want.
had enough things to where it's been like a problem where they've had maybe we get someone to experience, but
should do, yeah. I mean, you can open the PowerPoint here and then have it displayed over there.
I know, you're so harmless.
Why
Do
no?
you know what I mean?
That is fine.
And you
Thank you very much for the
hurt a lot.
compliment.
But yeah, it's just like very
Do you want to open it?
Oh, no worries, I was just busy rambling
Actually,
on.
do you know how many people are still scared of doing exercise? Like, even on the street, people like recoil into doorways and like hide from him. I'm like, he's a chihuahua.
Did I not just go on and just this? I was just like, I didn't know how to, like, because there's so many things happening, so what is the structure? And I just really like to
Afternoons just like the one, isn't it?
It's like putting all the objects, some of them as objects.
I should find a seat.
So we should just like respond to that.
Oh my god. Is that you? Did you do that stuff?
So this
Found
one
it important to say you're right.
Slowly,
Well done, that's great.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks
You
for
should
saying
make
that.
like, I've literally been wearing the same yoga
I have to make it up, otherwise I just don't
Do you know what today is like?
pants. Do you know how many days this week I've been doing that washing them?
Related to like just an aspect.
That's one of those things where it's like, no, to be fair, is I always make one for it. And I'm like, am I going to put makeup on and choose my outfit?
Yeah,
Or am I
I was like,
do you know what I mean? Or it's like I'd rather wear a really tan.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah,
exactly. Then you become
I
a bit
can
of
like
Sort of,
make my
I
face
wanted
glam.
to like,
Remember this, going on with like,
then what I did like, could you?
On a day like this, there's no point in me really make one anyway, so it just rubs off.
yes.